Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tom McNaught. I'm the Executive Director of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation, and on behalf of my colleague, Tom Putnam, the Director of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum, and all of our Library and Foundation colleagues, I thank you all for coming this evening. Let me begin by acknowledging the generous underwriters of the Kennedy Library Forums, lead sponsor, Bank of America, Raytheon, Boston Capital, the Lowell Institute, the Boston Foundation, and our media partners, the Boston Globe and WBUR. Tonight's forum is a very special one for those who work at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. Tonight's forum is a testimony to the hard work and dedication of government employees who work so hard to preserve the records of our nation's history, and in particular, those of President Kennedy. The publication of Listening In, the secret White House recordings of John F. Kennedy, which is now on sale in our museum store, would simply not have been possible were it not for the incredible skills and talent and professionalism and dedication of our library staff, again, government employees. There is one person in particular that Tom Putnam and I would like to acknowledge, and that is Maura Porter, an archivist who has been overseeing the declassification of these White House recordings for the last 11 years and who knows more about these 265 hours of President Kennedy's taped conversations than any other American. So I ask that you please join us in thanking and acknowledging Maura's work and that of all her colleagues here at the Kennedy Library. We have a wonderful panel with us tonight. Joining us for tonight's discussion is presidential historian Ted Widmer, who so carefully selected the most compelling and important of these remarkable recordings, and then who wrote beautifully detailed annotations of the transcripts, placing them in historical context for the reader and listener. With us also is presidential historian Ellen Fitzpatrick, a professor of history at the University of New Hampshire, also a wonderful and frequent contributor to our Kennedy Library forums. My colleague and friend, Tom Putnam, the Kennedy Library's outstanding director who brings such energy to the library's mission of preserving our nation's history, and our good friend, who we always love having with us, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Tom Oliphant, who will serve as tonight's moderator. But tonight's featured speaker is really President Kennedy, who in July 1962 installed hidden recording systems in both the Oval Office and the Cabinet Room, so that he might have a record of deliberations and exchanges during his administration. The president also used a dictaphone to record his personal observations following key meetings and events. And we thought you would all enjoy seeing the actual dictaphone that he used as senator before becoming president. We put it up here on the stage. We invite you to come and look at it after the forum, but this is the real thing. This is what the president used when he was in the Senate. The one he used when he was president is now at our new exhibit down at the National Archives, To the Brink, John F. Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Over the years, we have welcomed many individuals to this stage who have worked for President Kennedy, those who wrote for him, those who served with him in the Navy, those who knew him as a friend. They all had their own take, their own interpretation of what happened during those years, their own spin. Now it is the turn of President Kennedy. Our principal speaker tonight, the voice that we invite you to listen to, will be that of President Kennedy. Many of us here at the library see this new book as the one President Kennedy never had the opportunity to write. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce the individual who is most responsible for its writing and publication. It was Caroline Kennedy who first conceived the idea of a book that presented some of the most compelling and fascinating excerpts of these secret White House recordings. And it was Caroline who championed its publication. And I can personally attest that every word, every caption, every photograph, and listening in had Caroline's eye for both detail and accuracy. And I'm sure Ted Widmer will speak to that as well. Caroline Kennedy, as you know, is the author and editor of 9 best-selling books on American history, politics, and poetry. Actually, you can make that 10 best-selling books. We just learned today that Listening In is on the New York Times 10 best-selling list. Caroline, as you know, serves as the president of the Kennedy Library Foundation, which provides the financial support to this library for some of the programs that the government couldn't otherwise support. And at Caroline's request, all proceeds and revenues from the sale of this book will go to the Kennedy Library to support its programs. So have I mentioned that this book is now on sale in our museum? In our museum store, and Caroline has graciously agreed to remain behind this forum to sign the book. It is now my great pleasure to welcome to the stage Caroline Kennedy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's so nice. Welcome to all of you. It's wonderful to have you here at the Kennedy Library. It means a great deal to me that 50 years after my father's presidency, so many people still share his ideals and his vision for America. To me, his greatest legacy are the people that he inspired to enter public service. Almost every day, someone tells me that they ran for office, got involved in their community, joined the Peace Corps, volunteered in the inner city or in outer space, because he asked them to give back to this country that's given us all so much. The generation he inspired has passed that commitment on to their children and grandchildren in a continuity of spirit that continues to work for a more just and peaceful world. As we approach the 50th anniversary, my family and the Kennedy Library thought a good deal about how to best celebrate and honor my father's service and patriotism. We recognize that his time is becoming part of history, not living memory, and that brings opportunities as well as challenges. Both my parents loved history, and they passed that on to me and to my brother John. My father read voraciously about the Civil War, English parliamentary history, and the world wars of the 20th century. My mother preferred the ancient world and 18th century Europe. For them, the past was not a dry, dull affair, but full of exciting people, brave heroes and heroines, and events that could teach us a great deal about our own time. Here at the library, we decided to concentrate on making the history of the Kennedy administration accessible to the widest possible audience, in the hope that the treasures of the Kennedy Library will inspire people growing up today in the same way the stories of the past inspired my parents. On the 50th anniversary of my father's inauguration in January 2011, we launched the Digital Archive, putting all the president's papers, correspondence, memos, photographs, and film online so that people around the world could have access to this material, not just scholars who could come to Boston. We created the President's Desk, an interactive tool so that kids could click and learn about and experience the most important moments in the presidency. And we translated my father's major addresses into more than 40 languages available online. This project was the culmination of 10 years of digitizing, meta-tagging, and private sector partnerships, which have made this library truly the first presidential archive, digital presidential archive. Now, last fall, we released my mother's oral history, 7 conversations with historian Arthur Schlesinger, which had been sealed here at the library since 1964. And now, to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Cuban Missile Crisis, we are publishing a book and CD set called Listening In, The Secret White House Tapes of President John F. Kennedy. President Kennedy taped 265 hours of meetings, phone conversations, and private dictation between July 1962, when the taping system was installed, and November 1963. You'll hear more about this from our panelists, but the taping system was top secret. It seems that the only people who knew for certain of its existence were my father, his secretary, and the Secret Service agent who installed it. That is, until President Nixon made the idea of White House taping famous and infamous. And other presidential recording systems were revealed. Against the backdrop of Watergate, the concept of secret taping can seem problematic, but it is beyond doubt that this is a unique and invaluable historical resource. On these tapes, history unfolds in real time in the most dramatic possible way. We hear the tense confrontations of the civil rights movement and the life or death decisions being made during the Cuban Missile Crisis. People often ask me why my father installed the system. As a lover of history, I know he would have been drawn to this new technology as